Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ember Simber League Week 2. My name is Jack, and I am joined by Isaac. Today, I will be your play-by-play. Isaac's going to be color, and with that little preamble, we are being told that this draft is running fast. So, Isaac, I want to give you the floor for a moment just to say how we doing, how we excited for this week.
Yeah, it's a bit of an exciting week this time around. Moo Crew joining a little bit late into the league, so we didn't quite get to see them in week 1. On the other hand, White Lotus Wisteria definitely had one of the stronger performances, despite taking 3 games to win last time out against not Team Pearl, against Sabretooths.
Absolutely, and moving into this, before we get into draft, quick rundown on our lineups for the Moo Crew. We're going to be starting on blue side. We've got Ponyboy, the OG King Jr., Wham, Bretazol, and Half Fang. Whereas for WL Wisteria, we've got Dahmer in the top lane, Dragon in the jungle, Canadia in the mid lane, Voltaic Viper, and Chubby Chernobyl making up that bottom side. And did we notice any sort of unique picks coming into our draft prep? I know this is IBSG, so really take what you know about draft and throw it out. It's what the guys can play.
I saw Yorick on Dragon It Out's op.gg, and I'm hopeful that we get to see something crazy, because Dragon It Out definitely has a very odd champion pool. And also last week we didn't get to see Dragon It Out in the roster either. It was UG was subbed in for them. Actually had a really strong performance, so didn't hamper them too much. So that's the main thing I'm looking out for, is if Dragging It Out brings in the Yorick. The Ambessa jungle was one that he's even played recently in solo queue. So yeah, I mean, it sounds not optimal, but we'll have to wait and see as we start to head into draft. Now we should be ready to go.
Yep.
We'll start out with the bands, and the main thing I'm looking for is on the side of Muku, their support. I got word that it's going to be Catgirl subbing in for Half Fang, and one thing I want to see, which I don't know if it'll happen, if you can tell by the username of Catgirl, they're a Yumi player, and while I don't think this champion's any good at all, I just don't want to see it in my games, because I am a certified Yumi hater.
Makes sense, and I think it will be an interesting matchup, seeing as Chubby Chernobyl seems to like to go towards those enchanter picks. Has games on stuff like Braum, Leona, some other engaged tank supports, but from the top of that solo queue, seems to prefer going towards enchanters. And as we start already seeing the Malzahar taken off the board by Moo Crew. Is that Moo Crew on red side?
It's
Ice?
Mukro on red side.
It is. All right. So going up against White Lotus Wisteria, want to take away some of these picks they've already seen flexed, and the Nami also being taken away. That does kind of lead me to believe that they are either going to pick their support B1 or they're going to try and grab an ADC. Just with all of these bot lane centric bans, I know that there's so many enchanters, so picking a couple off usually doesn't make too big of a difference. And it looks like Mukru, for now, are at least going after mostly just those flex picks.
In terms of the support bans onto Catgirl, from what I saw, they don't exactly have the deepest champ pool, which could be an early concern. The Nami and the Yumi, both their two most played champions, and it's basically exclusively those two. And while the Enchanter class of champions is definitely one of the most similar in terms of champion style, I wouldn't be too worried if I saw them on like a Soraka, for example. If somebody has a champion pool of 2 champions, and we don't necessarily know how they're expected to perform, as this is their first week in the Cinder League, test them out. See what they got outside of their 2 comfort picks. So I don't necessarily disagree with that. They might not even be aiming to focus towards that, but Amumu, the first lot, pick locked in for White Lotus Wisteria. I typically tend to like Amumu. Like the further down the Elo bracket you go, because Curse of the Sad Mummy is just such a strong, simple ultimate that
Yeah,
has such a huge impact.
yeah, and it clears waves or clears camps so fast. Once you get blue buff, you can just keep that W on permanently. It also is Dragon's most played jungler, and I'm not surprised to see it met with the Akali, which is Wham's most played at
Oh yeah,
174 games in solo queue. The Aphelios has received buffs recently, and I think it is a good fit if you have a support that plays mainly enchanters because it is just it does well early with enchanters and scales well with them, and has a lot of kill threat with engage supports. The Xayah getting picked into what I really like because Aphelios really wants to be running forward and hitting as many autos as possible, changing those guns, and the Galio. You're starting to set up somewhat of a wombo. The Amumu goes in, the Galio goes in, does great in lane against Akali, and all the way through here, Pantheon being selected. This is the highest prio jungler on the patch. And I'm not surprised to see it prioritized this early by the OG King Jr.
yeah. Pantheon's just generally pretty strong. It's also a very simple champion as well, and so even though I didn't see too many games played from the OG King Jr. on this Pantheon, I'm not too overly concerned since it does kind of fit in with the style of champion that they typically play. From what I've seen in their solo queue games, I've seen some Vi and Warwick in the mix, so you know, awfully similar. And as we continue through the bands, I do like the Lulu takeaway from White Lotus Wisteria, especially as you mentioned with the Aphelios already being locked in. Interesting that they decided to take away Braum, considering that's a pretty common pairing with Aphelios.
Yeah, I think White Lotus, Chubby Chernobyl seemed to that was their go-to non-enchanter. So I think they're thinking that way. You still got stuff like Sona, Seraphine, Soraka, as you mentioned, still on the board. I was actually thinking Lulu would get picked up just because it's one of those other really strong enchanters that is more simple to pick up if you're already proficient at stuff like the Yumi or the Nami mostly. You can pick up Nunu pretty well. They're going to leave it to last pick, which isn't a terrible strategy, grabbing up that Renekton. Strong top lane, great blind pick, allows Dahmer to have a weak side where you're playing towards this more rocky bot lane. The Melio getting picked up is a little surprising, does provide a little bit of peel with that soccer ball, but other than that, a couple cleanses on the stuns by Pantheon and by Renekton, but not a ton of CC that they're going to be able to get rid of. Maybe just looking for giving that extra range to Xayah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Melio pick. I also haven't really seen Melio in the wheelhouse of Chubby Chernobyl, and I think out of all of the enchanters, Melio's definitely the most, I guess, I don't want to say difficult because it seems a bit like loaded, but for the lack of a better word to keep things moving, I want to say the most like difficult of the typical enchanters. I mean, there are people who argue like Rakan and like Terragar enchanters because they have heals, but uh, no, respectfully. um, so and also the combination with Xayah, I mean, it's not the most potent, but they will lock in the Urgot, and for Dahmer last week on the in game 3 on the Mordekaiser was let's just say it caused a lot of problems for Sabretooth.
Yeah, Mordekaiser is one of those champions. I feel like Mordekaiser, Set, Garen. There's a lot of champions that they do really well in the lane, and then when you try and move them out of the lane, they kind of look lost. Now, some Set players can really make it work. We saw that last week, but this Mordekaiser, I think it works well isolated in the Renekton lane. The Rel last pick works okay into Milio. Milio kind of has some very positive interactions with Rel, being able to cancel the crash down with that kick. So a bit of a question mark there, but I think you give last pick to your support. It's their first week playing, known for enchanters. I do like the strategy in game one of saying, you know, worst things worse, we lose and get blue side and can first pick a support. So for now, what do you want to play seeing the entire draft? Also, Rel Aphelios, not a terrible lane. You know, you have a lot of kill potential, a lot of lockdown, gives Aphelios a ton of uptime, and almost all of Aphelios' abilities really necessitate being able to constantly be autoing because they're either an ability that allows you to move forward to continuously proc them or an ability that allows you to take advantage of someone who's already been hit, like that the crescendum or the rifle one. I'm not going to remember the names right now. The rifle one, and then also the gravitum. Yeah, calibrum. There we go. So I think right now I'd have to give the comp I like better to Wisteria, just because they have a ton of lockdown, they have a lot of guaranteed CC, but their damage probably going to be lacking.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing that Wisteria does like, though, is that they do want Moo Crew to be running into them, and a lot of Moo Crew's comp is we're going to run into you sort of situation. Obviously, with the Pantheon, the Renekton, and the Rel, all just collapse in on a singular target. And I mean, the only target we're really going to be looking at on the side of Wisteria is mainly the Xayah. You can argue potentially the Melio as well because he's extremely squishy, but I do generally like the amount of safety, the amount of counter engages to survive that first initial jump that Wisteria does have. And so we will just have to wait and see how this plays out as we are loading onto the Rift very soon. As we've gotten the word, should be moving over to that right about now. But I think generally with how I was really impressed with how White Lotus Wisteria played last week, especially Canadia and it was Yuji as the jungler last week, but the mid jungle duo really ran that series, and especially getting Canadia that counter pick into the Kali, I think is extremely high value for them as like on an individual like player level.
Yeah, I think if Moo Crew are going to win this game, it's going to have to come through plays made by Wham. Just because you pick the Akali, you pick it. Choices go. Seeing Aftershock for Gallia, one of the options. You also see Phase Rush, Conqueror for the Akali, some extra confidence that they're going to be able to proc that often. And other than that, I don't see anything special about these loadouts, except for the fact that Aphelios forgot to buy items, and they are going back to base to grab those.
Yeah, that's one that you hate to see it. It does happen to the best of us. If you say you've never forgot to buy items at the start, like there are two people in this world: people who have forgot to buy items at some point playing League, and liars. So, I don't think we'll see too much of a punish on that. Neither of these teams are really looking for any sort of invade, so it'll be all right in the end.
Yeah, no punishments coming through from that, as we see, giving us a nice widescreen view. Want to give a shout out to our production, Ice, today, pulling double duty, not only producing this cast, but another. And trust me, this guy, he's a master under pressure, so make sure to really get on him, as it looks like we do have Half Fang in right now at support. And not Cat Girl. Some false info being given. Maybe worried that WLW would be listening into the comms. Who knows? But Half Fang, like we mentioned, also a fan of some of those Enchantress's. Happen going way too deep. I looked down for 1 second, and he's almost dead. Barrier being expended. First blood, 2 minutes and 22 seconds into the game, going into the pocket of Voltaic Viper.
Yeah, and,
might be another kill up here. Dommel forcing the flash. Now, no HP, no flash. Going to have to back. Luckily, does have teleport. Backed off the wave, but a lot of chaos already in this game.
Yeah, it's something that you'd really love to see. Something that is not too atypical of an IBSG style game. It's one of the reasons why casting at this level and like watching IBSG games is a thrill to see. And as you mentioned straight away, the kill going over to the side of Voltaic Viper. I do have an update about about earlier when I said Cackerel and Halfbang. Apparently, I just can't read correctly, and that the master sheet was correct. And because I asked the contact for Moo Crew Kai about any potential substitutions, and they mentioned. I'm reading it back now, and they said that Halfbang is in for Catgirl, but what the Master Sheet says, wait, we have Gank coming through, though.
Again, coming through, Dragon trying to make a force onto Britozol. Now Halfbang coming in with the crash down, saving them for the moment. A lot of damage going through, but no barrier and no flash forward means that they will get out alive. On the other side, Wham, very low, but Galio not having enough mana to fully go in as another skirmish likely taking place in the top lane. The OG King Jr. waiting, biding their time, has access to flash, could use that flash shield vault combination. Does not look like for the moment that they are going to go for it.
Waiting a while though.
Yeah, they're losing a lot of time. Amumu getting their first back off. Now channeling that recall as we see Canada back up, meaning no gang coming through, just a moment to wait and see if there was an angle.
Yeah, good heads up play from Canada. It's one of those things where when you see the enemy laners already so low, it's really easy to be very tempted to try to go in. Hold on.
But he just barely gets him with the dice heading out. Good awareness that he could get enough damage out right there. I talked last week about one of the most important aspects of playing at a professional level is understanding how much damage you can do at any given moment, and Ponyboy clearly showing that they knew it in that time.
Yeah, and this is actually an extremely huge kill for Ponyboy with that wave pushing in under the tower on the cannon wave alone, which the siege minion was also not all that high health, so Dahmer's going to lose a huge amount of XP and gold to this tower. It is a very timely moment, very opportune play for Ponyboy, and with how much he'll get out of that, it's a very different look to what we saw last week from Dahmer on this Mordekaiser.
Yeah, being able to get that kill under tower, like you mentioned, will go a long way, because that early aggression from Ponyboy resulted in them being behind in CS, as we do see the Wisteria boys picking up that first dragon, Mountain Dragon, secured, utilizing that bottom push. So now going to start that dragon stacking, as Ocean will be the next. But as I was saying, having that early CS deficit, thanks to going so aggressive, now not only equalizing it, but getting ahead, sitting at a level advantage of 1, already having access to that ultimate, that Dominus, going to mean that they can push that advantage even further going into future plays.
Yeah, and especially on no flashes either side, I think Renekton just like default, even without like the Dominus, is just typically stronger. Mordekaiser not really having any sort of mobility without it. Easily find himself in a little bit of trouble. And also in that 1v1, Dominus definitely does get just generally higher value, assuming that it does stay on 1v1. We obviously have the two junglers hanging around this top side for a moment. OG King Jr. just hitting that level 6 now, but Dragon It Out is in the vicinity.
Oh, going in here, even though there is a massive advantage, but it's because they know that the hero's entrance is behind them. A one-man, zero-man taunt going to be landed, but Ponyboy is well within the death realm, going to come out and find 3 members, gets a decent amount of healing from that Cull of the Meek, but it won't be enough. Wham! Now trying to get in there. Perfect execution has been started. They have a decent amount of damage able to come through, but they're waiting so long on it. They did end up actually using it, but no meaningful damage from it means that all 3 members of Wisteria will get out alive, and they will also secure 1 kill.
Yeah, I thought for a second that we were going to have a huge moment from Wham on this Akali, especially with how experienced they are on this champion, and with such low health bars, it lights up that singular neuron I have up there, and it made you feel like quite good. At the very least, the side of Muku do get the flash out of Canadia, which does limit the amount of playmaking that this Galio does have. But speaking of Canadia, in that last fight, I didn't quite get to it, but it was a really well coordinated fight from the side of White Lotus Wisteria, knowing that they had the numbers advantage with the hero's entrance to create that extra kill. But it doesn't look like we're going to give up on this top side just yet with Grubs up.
Yeah, going for that shield vault onto the Milio, but a 3-man Curse of the Sad Mummy will land. No damage to follow up, though, as the bot lane members are cut off by Wham. And even with the exhaust put down, Amumu is dead. And all remain for the side of Moo Crew. What started as just a clearing out of wards led to Wisteria not really positioning well enough. And they're still looking to contest the health bars of Moo Crew low enough to where they have to respect the fact that Galio is in the area with full health. So in the end, it will just be the 1 kill picked up, and we're going to continue this dance around the Void Grubs.
Yeah, you did mention the positioning there and the threat from Wham doing a really good job of separating that fight out and isolating a dragon there. So even though Wham didn't necessarily get any sort of like kill participation score towards that, I do believe and would have to say that Wham was very influential in that last fight. Because you mentioned those health bars weren't looking all too great on the side of Muku, forcing a recall. And now, anyway, it seems like White Lotus Wisteria are going to be ones taking the Grubs, despite how that last fight went.
Yeah, really impressive job there. So far, I've been quite impressed by WL Wisteria's macro across the map. They did swap lanes to bring Xayah and Milio topside, so they would be having a numbers advantage for that Grub fight. Obviously, the positioning on the fight resulted in one of them dying, as it looks like we're going to have a fight here on Wham, but that Shuriken flip does get them out, in the perfect execution will build some more space. Curse of the Sad Mummy not up and available, but it will force Wham to completely expend the perfect execution, get away, and now at a half health bar means going to be more difficult to approach this minion wave. Galio, despite only having tank items, has enough base damage to kill this Akali in the moment, so going to have to respect that.
Yeah, Galio's base damages are at least early on high enough to where especially in a 2v1, you're going to have to back away there, especially on the Bomby Cinder as well, going to put extra weight. Hold on, Dahmerson and Ponyboy to the Death Realm.
Yeah, Death Realm here, I'm not sure if either of them really have the kill threat, because Ponyboy not using that Cull of the Meek very early, now slicing and dicing after, and it will be the AoE from the Indestructible that gets the kill for Dahmer, and now we see a massive stun coming through across the entire team. Curse of the Sad Mummy doing so much work. One by one, they go down. Enormous Moonlight Vigil heals up Proposal, but it's not enough. Flash forward by Voltaic. Viper secures the triple kill, as across the map, it is a 4-for-1 in favor of Wisteria. And, I mean, the coordination between Canadia and Dragon just so crucial in that fight.
Yeah, I mean the wombo combo on this Amumu and Galio with the Curse of the Sad Mummy into the hero's entrance is it's getting some pretty insane value already. We saw it earlier in that first fight where it linked up there in the top lane, but this time around, the Curse of Sad Mummy was not separated at all from the rest of the team of White Lotus Wisteria, and dragged it out once again, starting out a fight that in a way that, you know, finds, I think it was 4 members there that time.
Yep.
And that's just the value that this Amumu can bring if you don't respect the fact that they're all sitting together. These fights from the side of Mukru, they just need to be a bit more spaced out. They have the enough tools to be able to get in onto like key targets from different angles. They don't necessarily need to be grouped up like that with their composition. So just generally, we need to see some sort of change on how Mukru want to go about these fights if they want to have a chance here in Game 1.
Flash forward by OG King Jr. does get the flash out of Canadia, but not much more. You'll take that trade every day of the week, though, if you are the jungler, as Pointy Boy again slices and dices in quite aggressively. Death Realm is up, but Dahmer chooses not to use it, just poking them down with those abilities isolated. And as we move forward towards a Rift Herald spawn in about a minute and a half, turret platings are going down. Looks like most of the completed items are coming through on the side of Mukru, but the gold is dead even.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of that comes through with the ability to farm. And they have CS leads across just about every single lane. Hold on, half angle to go in.
Oh, utilizing the Magnet Storm, but he's missed about just every ability at their disposal. Here comes Pantheon, though, from across the map. Does get that feather pull ripped through the Voltaic. Will go down to the double spear combo from Rel and Pantheon. Wham gets knocked up in this mid lane as we come over here. The Shuriken Flip will get them to safety. But as we do a little recap, I mean, just not able to land the Shattering Strike or the Crash Down, but in the end, it is enough damage to take down Voltaic Viper.
That's just the power of Pantheon as a champion. To be able to, the ability to create a numbers advantage from halfway across the map is always valuable. Pantheon's ganks, especially post 6. Well, we saw the amount of power that they got there, and plus with the additional lockdown with the Gravitum Q there for Bretzel. I made that one fairly trivial, despite the as you mentioned, the Crash Down and the Magnet Storm not quite getting the full value that you would have wanted to see there.
OG King Jr. back mid lane again, not in range to hit that shield vault. Dragon is here to contest. Really goes to showcase the difference in these compositions. If it's a 3v3 even, Mukru are going to have the damage to outfight you. As they now catch out, the side of Chubby Chernobyl uses the flash to get out. Not going to have that for the upcoming Herald fight. Won't have it for the upcoming Dragon, so a good flash to get out. But as I was saying, if it's a 5v5, Wisteria have the CC to lock everybody down and make up for that damage that they are lacking. But if it isn't a full 5-man, Mukru have so much more damage than them coming out of Pantheon, coming out of Aphelios, Renekton, Akali, so they have to stay together and have to stay grouped. As you see 4 men up here. Looks like they're going to try and find an angle on this Rift Herald.
Yeah, that is also my concern with this fight, or the side of Wisteria, at least the early concern that I have, is that both ADCs are still in the bottom lane, and a large portion of Wisteria's damage is going to be coming through that Xayah. Obviously, Mordekaiser can do a pretty solid amount of damage, and, well, if he gets the right angle, can do nearly enough, but that basically requires the entirety of Mukru to charge in onto Dahmer, which, I mean, I guess relying on the mind control abilities of Dahmer to get the enemy team to run into him directly is certainly one way to go about it should they try to fight this, but actually it doesn't look like we'll get too much of a fight for this Rift Herald, but one in the top lane come through.
Yeah, we do see Mukru going to start it up. Dalmer is utilizing that Death Realm, flashes forward, and will get the shield from that Indestructible, guaranteeing them that 1v1 kill, but there's no response. Dragon recalled back to base. There's 3 people working on the Herald right now. Wham went back mid to hold Canadia, so they do pick up a kill in that top lane to continue snowballing Mordekaiser, but it will be the Rift Herald secured by Mukru, their first neutral objective of the game. On the other end, Dragging It Out starting to get that dragon. Dahmer does not have access to the Death Realm. Magnet Storm will pull him in, going to have to take a lot of healing. No Riftmaker yet, trying to trade onto Half-Fang and will get the kill in response. 1-for-1 topside, and Dragon going over to Wisteria as well. Soul point, and no real contest despite having 2 members bot lane. Really well snuck there by Dragging It Out. And now Wham is in trouble using that public execution plus the shuriken flip, flashes away from the bandage toss. Going to get out, but this game, starting to fall away despite a gold lead on the Mukru side. That's mostly CS advantages and a difference in turret plates and a turret taken for the side of Mukru. Other than that, starts to feel like the scaling on the side of Wisteria starting to get a bit over the heads of Mukru.
Yeah, Wisteria, as you mentioned, the scaling is pretty valuable that they have. I mean, Galio, Amumu, Zaya alone are pretty crazy, and even with an enchanter as Emilio, going to be a lot more valuable as this game goes on. And even though Mukru do manage to have a gold lead, mostly as you mentioned through farming through the tower plates. One thing that did happen with the last Drake that went over it, not only was that soul point, that's also feats of strength going completely uncontested. So even though that shutdown went on to the OG. Oh wait, what?
Moonlight Vigil and the Grand Starfall going to come down immediately, explode Voltaic Viper, and with 3 people bottom lane, looks like a push for this turret might be in the works. Never mind, they are happy with just getting the kill. They are going to back away, so they do grab another kill that will help them with their gold lead, but what it won't do is grant them some permanent structures to be destroyed or any objectives on the map. Gonna have to start translating these kills into meaningful objective wins on the map.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be necessarily too concerned about not getting the tower off that. Dragging It Out was in the area. It would have been a very difficult ask to have been able to get anything there, and I mean, there aren't really any neutral objectives on the map. Either Otacon just spawning right now, but that's not exactly one that you can take off of a kill in the bottom lane, especially if they're spawning on the top side of the map. So, more gold is never something to complain about, and honestly, the Grand Starfall doesn't have the longest cooldown ever. It should be back and available for the next time that Mukru want to fight over something, so not really, I'm not too concerned by their lack of gaining anything else off of that. Plus, it was a shutdown as well, which, you could argue there are things to say about the shutdown system that the team down in gold has, has a shutdown on their head.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is also gold going into the pockets of the OG King Jr. Now has a Serpent's Fane. Love that itemization. Facing Emilio, facing a Mordekaiser, having the ability to get rid of these massive fight-breaking shields, going to be important. Also takes that responsibility off of Renekton, allows them to go for a bit of a more bruiser-oriented build. As both teams migrating into the mid lane, showing clear focus on the Dragon in a minute's time, and the Otacon, which has spawned in the top side. Both teams wanting to be able to respond if they want to go just cross-map. Obviously, if you're Mukru, you do not want to give up that soul uncontested Infernal. For the side of Wisteria would be quite important, seeing as they are lacking in damage as this game continues. The scaling that they're going to get from Galio and Amumu is mostly going to be tank-oriented. These champions are going to get harder and harder and harder to kill as the game goes forward, and with no real armor penetration being built yet, that's going to get harder to deal with until those items come through. So I think if I'm Mukru, going to try and set up towards that dragon in 27 seconds. If I'm White Lotus Wisteria, I might want to just give this dragon for free in exchange for the Otacon.
Yeah, it's certainly a very big potential threat that can come down should the side of Mukru look to start this strike coming up within 7 seconds. And as you mentioned, the single Drake value that Mukru get out of the Infernal Drake is not like some of the lowest you'll ever see, but in comparison to that Otacon, it's definitely less. That being said, the teleport's coming down from Dahmer towards this fight, so they'll go for it.
Watch this going forward. The Curse of the Sad Money comes down, and on top of that is the Hero's Entrance. Magnet Storm will not matter at all, as all 5 members of Wisteria are ripping through the Mukru. No damage to follow. Dahmer is taking quite a bit, but still has that Undestructible in their pocket. Flash out by Protozel will actually get a response by Mordekaiser, but nothing comes of it past that. Still a numbers advantage, 5 against 3, and that power play should be enough to secure White Lotus Wisteria with this dragon.
Yeah, a 24-minute Infernal Soul is huge value for White Lotus Wisteria. Their gold deficit is basically non-existent. Excuse me. At this point, and not only that, it does mean that with the numbers advantage, they can be allowed to set up a little bit more around this bear and around this Otacon with those two big objectives in both in the top side of the map this time around, means that it just gives them a little bit of an extra chance to set up for those team fights, and we know how strong that White Lotus Wisteria has been, specifically dragging it out, linking up with Canadia to find multiple multi-targeted CC abilities on top of each other. Again, that wombo combo with the Curse of the Sad Mummy into the Hero's Entrance has been getting some of the most value I have ever seen it get in a game so far for Wisteria.
Yeah, and they're actually being quite patient with it too. You saw in that last fight, did not utilize the Curse of the Sad Mummy right away, waited for some members to go in so that they could have immediate follow-up. And I want to make this point now, and we will most likely address it later on. With that Dragon Soul being taken, don't have to worry about the bottom side of the map for the next 4 minutes. They already have the turret down there, but once Elder comes up, it is still a 1k gold advantage on paper for Mukru. Obviously, it's a bit different seeing as they have the feats of strength plus the Dragon Soul and those 4 dragon stats, but on paper a 1k gold lead just about shrinking now, so that Elder Dragon still is potentially going to be contested as Halfling just gets immediately destroyed under the top lane turret. Dominus is proc, but it will not matter, as it's only a matter of time until Dahmer finds their next victim. The top turret taken, 2 kills taken, and Otacon surely will be taken.
Yeah, everyone on the side of Mukru, at least who's left alive, was spotted on the map, on the opposite side of the map without teleports, and so at that point you just you go in and you get a huge value for it. It's a bit of a confusing decision to me to have all those members of Mukru on the opposite side of the map with the Otacon and the Baron up on the map, both on that top side. I mean, I guess you could pull some extra pressure towards that bottom side. Maybe you could push fast enough, but they weren't able to do that. And without the teleports, it's a suboptimal decision from the side of Mukru. I think I don't want to get completely too far gone into just outright flaming these players, because when you're in the moments like these, you'd feel like, okay, we have to change I guess the idea is you have to change something up every single time that Mukru have tried to fight even 5v5 into White Lotus Wisteria, they haven't found success. So that's my best interpretation of what they were trying to do there. But hold on,
OG King finds that shield vault onto Chubby Chernobyl. Won't find a ton of damage, but the Moonlight Vigil does come through, and it will be that Q active that finds a shutdown onto the Chubby Chernobyl Milio. And now you do have a numbers advantage. You do have a near even gold score. You can defend this mid turret. But all this meantime, Dahmer is pushing in your topside. Ponyboy in no real position to contest. Only MR in the kit are those Merc Treads. But this is a good call here, collapsing on that topside. Mid lane turret was already very low, so the shield vault will go forward. Serpent's Fang in the pocket of Pantheon means that Indestructible Shield will not be as impactful. They got to make a decision, though, as to what they are going to do. Death Realm comes through. OG King taking a lot of damage, going to die.
Oh my god.
Realm. Dominus procced, but it's having to be used to run, and running is not an option when the Death's Grasp pulls you in. Now it's round two. Two more members of Moo Crew running up topside, but this time Dahmer's got reinforcements. Canadia discourages any more advancement from Half Fang, and it is just utter domination for Mordekaiser in the topside.
Yeah, even though Ponyboy was the first one to get that solo kill in the top lane, I think Mordekaiser just has to be banned against Dahmer. This is note to all the teams out there at this point. If you're playing White Lotus Wisteria, just ban Mordekaiser in the first round of bans. Like, get it out of this guy's hands. He smurfed on it last week against Sabretooth in Game 3. Basically made that game unplayable for Sabretooths, and while the team effort this time around, it's been a more total team effort. It's not just been Dahmer on this Mordekaiser, but especially in that moment, it's just get it up. Just don't let this guy get Mordekaiser. There's no more notes.
Yeah, it's clear that once they get ahead on this champ, it's hard to remember as Flash is used by Canadia, that it was first blood for Ponyboy onto Dahmer, as it looks like this chase is going to continue. Dragon is running there as fast as they can. Crashdown will not land the knockup. The double taunt will come through, and now back up has arrived. Curse of the Sad Mummy will get two snared. The knockup will kill the other. Double kill for Galio, and in the meanwhile, in a 1v2, Dahmer just grabbed himself another kill onto Wham. This 174, about to be 175 game. Akali not really showing up. Obviously did get counterpicked, but just looks not really useful in this moment. You draft a composition that has mostly burst damage, and you're playing up against all these tanks building so much HP and resistance. Just really doesn't make it as meaningful, and it looks like they are prepared to take game one in this moment.
Yeah, this one's all done and dusted. Not quite an ace coming down, but it is game one over to White Lotus Wisteria. And a really strong showing again for them this time around. And they played their composition exactly the way that they wanted to. They let Moo Crew run into them and then pressed their buttons and won, because, well, that's how that exchange goes. If you just in a 5v5, and I think Moo Crew, I want to see a stylistic change from them in terms of draft next time around in game two, because it looked like the way they wanted to play those fights was like in a typical like front to back 5v5 sort of situation. They did line up together as a team ready to go into a team fight, but their composition, what they drafted, just, you can't play that composition that way, especially into Moo Crew's comp.
Yeah, when you only have a Kali, you have Pantheon, it doesn't really provide you a lot of damage front to back. You need to find angles, you need to find burst. And I think it was really telling from White Lotus Wisteria the way they played the comp, because when Mordekaiser was just needing to farm and needing to hold Renekton top, you just saw Dahmer sitting topside, not joining, not grouping, and the only time that Wisteria would take fights is when they had all four members there, so that the Galio CC and the Amumu CC could mitigate the lack of damage they really had innately. And I'm really impressed by the way they executed that composition. We are going to take a brief break, and then we are going to head into game 2. So see you right back here soon.